tend to not love this because do you know what's in this swarm that you kind of don't want to lose? Your queen. It's not the end of the world, so please don't feel like, oh no, I lost my queen. I'm doomed, I'm doomed. This time of year, you're not doomed, you're fine. They're going to raise another queen. But if you can prevent this, then you're going to be able to save your queen and maximize your production and maximize your honey. And what I'm going to tell you about is preventing this and in your hive and how you manage it. And Andy's going to talk later, I think, about splits. So I'm going to try to avoid that conversation so you're not bombarded with it. A split is just a man-made swarm. So this is what the natural part of it looks like. But we're going to talk about how to prevent swarming in your hive and how you manage it. I have a couple other pictures, and you're going to be in the hives later, so you're going to be able to see this firsthand. Raise your hand if you have bees already. Okay, do we know what eggs and larvae, honey, nectar, all that looks like? Okay, perfect. One of the things that you can do to prevent swarms is just know your time of year and know your blooms. If you're not already writing down a bloom calendar, you might want to start that. And I can share a file on Facebook or email it out or whatever about a bloom calendar. When you see certain things blooming, nature is doing something. So try to take note of what's blooming, even if you don't know what it is. Take a picture, be like, oh, that tree's blooming and the beekeeper said to do this. In a couple of years, it'll make sense. It won't make sense at first. It's fine. I can still barely tell you what a dandelion looks like. But I know when this thing does this, then I need to do this. So just kind of try to notice it and talk to people that know plants because that'll help you. So the best way to do it is to know what time of year it is and then manage your hive accordingly. Starting out, you got a lot of things thrown at you and you might not know what you're looking at. So you want to make sure your bees have space this time of year. Everything's reproducing, right? We have all these flowers, cute little lambs and bunnies and stuff like that. Everything's reproducing. So your bees are going to look something like this, crawling all over the frames. And this isn't too crowded, but it's getting that way. And so when your bees start running out of space, that's when they're going to end up doing the swarm. You need to be, just like a farmer, you need to be weeks ahead of them. If you want a tomato on the table tonight, you should have thought about that. I don't do tomatoes. A long time ago, months ago, I don't know, like in the fall, do something with soil, plant seeds, grow it, protect it. So if you want to prevent a swarm, you got to think about that, like before now. If your bees are starting to get cramped, you should have put a super on a week ago, right? So that's where it comes into look at these plants, know what's going on, listen to people talking about it, follow blogs or whatever of reputable people so that you kind of have a head start on preventing the swarm. This right here, it's a great picture. It doesn't show what I want you to see, but maybe later in the inspections you'll see what backfilling is. Bill's pretty good with his bees, so you might not see it, so sorry. But backfilling is when there's so much nectar available to the bees that they're putting that nectar anywhere they can. And they're going to put it where you kind of want the queen to be laying an egg. Those cells are for the bees. So whoever gets there first wins. If the queen gets there first, she's going to lay an egg. If the workers get there first, they're going to put nectar or pollen in there. So the idea is everybody needs that space. Everybody needs to have what they need to get it done. You need to be the manager. You need to make sure the queen has places to lay eggs and that the workers have places to put that nectar there. And if you're not managing it, they're going to do what they naturally do. They're going to be fine, but they're going to swarm. So you want to be ahead of that. Kind of makes sense so far? Yes, sir.
Can you build out too quickly and have too much room for them?
You can. And this time of year, I'm going to say not really, because they are expanding. So good luck keeping up with them. Do you know how many eggs the queen can lay in a day? Like 1,000. So that sounds like a lot. Well, that means that 1,000 eggs are developing and 1,000 bees are emerging every day. So you can get a nuke, you can get I'm going to say nuke because packages, they don't have a laying queen yet. You can get a nuke and be like, oh, they're doing so well, I'm going to put them in my yard and I'll check them in a month. Not this time of year, because the queen is already laying eggs. So in a month, that's a lot, right? They can like double or triple in a month. So you've got to be ahead of that. So to answer your question, yes, this time of year, I already got couple of boxes on my bees. Everything's great. There's beautiful weather, flowers are blooming. They'll grow into that. In the fall, you can have way too much room. If you give them so much room, you're going to be bombarded with pests. So another reason you want to keep an eye on the schedule, on what's blooming, listen to what veteran keepers are talking about doing, because if you're doing the too much room in the fall or in the winter, that's going to be detrimental to your bees. So when you see backfilling, you're a little behind. They don't have enough room. You should have added a box a week ago. Okay? So when you start to see these blooms or start to see population increase, then you want to start giving them more room. Another way that you can prevent swarming is by splitting, and again, that's something that Andy's going to talk about, and that's when you force a swarm. You split them in half and you give them another box. Good so far? Okay, no questions. Yes. This was what I wanted to show was backfilling. So what you would see in backfilling is where they're putting nectar here instead of like an egg. If you want to have, there's a brood nest. Are you familiar with the brood nest? So bees build their nest in a sphere type shape. The queen's in the middle, and they keep it really, really warm. So the queen will lay those eggs. That's where the brood will develop. And then outside of that is a little pollen ring, and outside of that is your honey. So if you start seeing nectar in the middle, that's a sign that they're running out of space and they need more. Now, adding a box, like you said, adding a box is adding space. But that's not necessarily usable space until what happens? Until they've drawn out the comb. So it's great to think, okay, I'm going to put all these boxes on this and then they're fine. And if they're crowded today and you put a box on it, they're still too crowded because they can't use that for a few days at least, more like a week or two. They can't start laying eggs and putting honey in there. So you want to be a little ahead of your bees all year long, not just in the spring. For the spring, it's definitely swarm management. In the fall, it's a million other things that we'll talk about later, so you're not too scared yet. But for right now, it's basically make sure that they have the space, make sure they have the resources, they have pollen in their environment, and the nectar flow is it's started. Mine are bringing in all kinds of nectar. So your bees have plenty to bring in. You need to make sure that they have the space to put it somewhere safe without losing your bees. If you have extra equipment, and if you bought a nuke, you do, it's not a bad idea to put that nuke outside somewhere in your yard as a swarm trap. It's a 50-50 chance, so please don't hear that and get too excited. But if you've got extra equipment in the basement, and you kind of need extra equipment with beekeeping because you just never know what's going to happen and when they need space, put something out in your yard far, far away from your bees. And if they do swarm, and if you're lucky, maybe they'll go in your swarm trap. I've caught a couple, I've lost a couple. It's not going to be 100%, but it's better than nothing, and at least you know that you tried. And that way, if your bees do swarm, if they get away from you, then maybe they'll go in a swarm trap. And if they don't go in your swarm trap, maybe they'll go in somebody else's swarm trap if we all put our equipment outside. Yes, she said, is there an oil or an attractant? You can. Commercially, there's something called Swarm Commander. I've never used it. I use a frame of drawn comb, old comb that I probably should have thrown away. I just use that, and that way if the mice get it, like, I don't care. But anything that kind of smells like bees, lemongrass oil is another thing that you might have in your cabinet you can make. I used a recipe online to make a swarm lure, and it involves coconut oil, lemongrass oil, and beeswax. And it's not much lemongrass oil. You can bombard them and you can chase them away with it. So be real careful. More is not better. I forget what the recipe is, but it's something like a square-inch cube of beeswax, almost equal amounts of coconut oil, and like a drop of lemongrass oil. And it makes this slimy, balmy type stuff, and you just smear a little bit of it into the swarm trap. And again, it's not guaranteed. I'm not telling you you're going to catch a swarm tomorrow. But if they're around, maybe they'll go in that box instead of your soffit. That'd be nice. Yes?
So if you set out that swarm trap and the bees start go in there, make their own queen, or do they have a queen that comes along? I don't know.
A queen is usually with them. Sometimes it's a virgin queen, but they've got a queen with them. So they might not lay right away, but if you leave them alone for a week or two, they usually get mated and then they lay their eggs. So Any questions on swarm prevention? Okay, I feel like I didn't cover everything. That was really fast. Did I talk too fast? Okay. What else do you want from me? Yeah, thank you. Sorry. I thought I was doing one thing. Providing room, nectar storage, and ventilation. Thank you. All right. Thanks. So for ventilations on there, so I'll talk about that. They keep their brood nests at 95 degrees year-round. So in the wintertime, you don't want too much space. That's a lot of space to try to heat. If you have one of those vaulted ceilings, you know all about that. Right now, it's warmer overnight. You're not going to get those freezing temperatures overnight anymore. So if you have screen bottom boards, that's the way I do it. You don't have to do it that way. But the screen bottom boards do help with their ventilation. If they're really hot and they're really cramped, they're going to swarm a little bit faster than if they have that ventilation and they have that extra space. So another way that you can use the screen bottom boards, you can use what's called slatted racks. I have not used them. Some people swear by them. It's, if you could imagine like shutters, the little slats, it's kind of like a little section of that between your bottom board and your brood nest, and it just gives them a little bit of space to have some air kind of blow through there. But you got to remember your bee space too. If you're going to make something, you have to remember bee space. Have we talked about bee space before? So you've got to respect bee space. If it's less than 1/4 of an inch, the bees will propolize it. They'll put that caulk in there. It's like wet peanut butter. Super fun to deal with. If it's more than 3/8 of an inch, they will comb it. So if you're going to make something because you're a do-it-yourselfer and you don't want to buy it, I totally get it. Just make sure that you're respecting bee space, because you can save a lot of money doing that, but you can also have a mess within a couple of weeks this time of year because they're building super duper fast. The other thing on your agenda was young queens. Does anybody remember how long it takes for a queen to go from egg to emerge?
16 days.
16 days. So it's great because nature has taken care of it and they're the quickest one to come out. But just like putting a box on your hive, they're not laying the day they come out. They are emerging, they're figuring it all out, they're learning how to fly, they're wiggling their legs and growing and trying to get stronger. When your queen emerges, she's a virgin. She's not ready to lay her eggs. And she doesn't look much different than a regular worker bee. She kind of looks like a worker bee on speed. She runs around like a disaster. And she looks funny because her abdomen's a little longer and she's got that bald thorax. She looks a little bit different than the workers, but it's not that really pretty picture of a queen that's nice and big and long and like almost like a worm, because she hasn't been mated and she's not full of sperm that she needs to go out and get. So after 10 days in the hive, 12 days in the hive, she'll go out and she'll do her mating flight if we have weather like this. If it's raining, if it's windy, if it's cold, whatever, they're not gonna take her out, and they're not gonna be a drone congregation yard for her to mate in. So your young queens are fantastic resources, but they're not quite ready to lay their eggs. So if you get into your hive sometime and you see one of those young queens, it might be that your hive already swarmed. So you might want to just leave her alone. If you get into your hive and you see some of that backfilling, or you see some queen cells starting with some larvae in it, it might be time to split. So those are some of the practices that we're going to talk about and reference today, and we'll show you how to do it. Please don't go in your hive and freak out if you see a little queen cup. Like, they're always doing something. You need to look in that cell and see if there's an egg, see if there's larvae, really see what's going on. Keep a journal of what you do, whether it be a notebook or an app in your phone. I wrote it on top of my inner cover so I could know, okay, it was this hive that I did this in. Yes, ma'am? It should be. So if you have a nuke, the queen is laying, and a reputable breeder will check that before you pick that up. It's basically ready to go. It's a nucleus. You stick it in a box, you give them more frames, and they're rolling. If you get a package, the way the packages are built is you go out in the bee yard and you shake a bunch of bees into like a critter cage, and then you go to another place where you have a ton of queens. They should be mated, and you stick that queen in a queen cage in the package. So you've built a colony, but they just met. So you're not going to get the production immediately like you would with a nuke. So you want to put that package into your hive, feed them